Good morning, everyone. It's originally designed as a fireside chat, but they wouldn't allow us to build a fire on the stage. So Charlie said, well, what we need is two ferns, so I give you Charlie Martin between two ferns. I don't know if I'm Zach Galifianakis or if Charlie is, but I think we'll find out in the course of the conversation today. I'm Corey Tadaro. I'm the Director of Research and Analytics at Martin Ventures. I've been working with Charlie for, 7, 8 years now. And I think you all are in for a treat. So to get it all started off, Charlie, I'd love for you to talk about your background in healthcare and what informs your view of how the system operates today. And we'll get to that view in a minute, but why don't we start off with a little background?
Well, there's not enough time to do that, so I'll try to condense it down a little bit. I think I've been in healthcare my whole career, most of that in the hospital business going back to the early 60s. So after 50 years of being a hospital guy through founding General Care and then working at HCA for 7 years, and Health Trust and Arenda and Vanguard, several times along the way I thought we were at a breakout point. You know, we're going to have to change things, too much money spent, not enough outcome, things have to change. I thought that through the 70s, through the 80s, through the 90s, through the aughts. I kept thinking things are going to change. And interestingly, things haven't changed very much. In 50 years, things haven't changed much in healthcare. The rest of the world has gone bounding off into a lot of directions, but healthcare is pretty much the way it's been for a long, long time. And all the excitement we hear today about these innovations, little things we're going to do, I think are sort of picking at the edges of what needs to be done in healthcare. If you think about it, I was talking to the governor of a northern state that abuts Canada, and his solution for his state Medicaid program is to buy health care in Canada because he can buy it less expensively and more efficiently, spending his state tax dollars matched with federal dollars in Canada than buying it in his state. He also said that the three important things that states do, this is true at the state level, less so at the federal level, we do three important things. We educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate. And if you think about it, all three of those industries are done about the same way they've been done forever. You see a lot of innovation in education? No. There's an establishment that stomps it out. You can't be too innovative. There's too much ingrained opposition to radically changing education. So let's just put more money at it, right? Let's don't go with those things that are proven to work. Let's represent all the interests that are out there. Forget about the kids. Let's represent the political and the economic interests and the education association, all those people, and forget about the kids. We know things that work. So we throw more and more money at the problem. Is it getting better? Arguably, some places, but not a lot. Let's look at prisons. What have we been doing? Locking people up for hundreds of years. We got 2 million of them locked up now, right? We build more prisons. We have, 3 and outs laws, and we have sentencing guidelines. All this stuff. We have 2 million people locked up. Is anything getting better in the prison system or getting any rehabilitation? Is anybody coming out of the prison prepared to be a better citizen? So if you come out of the school system not prepared to get a job, you come out of the penal system not prepared to be a contributing citizen, and you come out of healthcare no healthier than you were when you came in, how have these three institutions stayed so strong and so long? How have they done that? Has anybody ever thought about this problem except me? I really like a warm, receptive audience. It helps me a lot when I know I'm speaking to my people out there. So I'm just assuming nobody gets this, that prisons have been the way they've been forever, and we're still getting the same result. Schools have been the way they've been forever, and we're getting the same results. Healthcare has been the way it's been forever, and we're getting the same results. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Well, here's the stupidity of me. I spent all these decades inside the healthcare system saying, surely we can fix this. We know what needs to be done. I sat on the board of Rand Health. I was on Rand Corporate Board. We did studies. We did things. Beth McGlynn's study 10, 12 years ago said, half the healthcare spending in this country is inappropriate. Half of it spent on things that do not need to be done. The evidence does not support doing these things that we do a lot of, driven by our payment system. It's fee for service, it's volume driven, so if we don't kill somebody, if we can keep them alive, we can do more and more stuff to them longer and longer. So why doesn't behavior change? Because that's how we're paid to do it. The other half of the problem in healthcare is a lot of things that the evidence tells us we really need to look at these. Childhood issues, chronic disease issues, end-of-life issues. We don't look at any of those. Why? The system doesn't pay us for it. It pays us to get somebody alive, keep them alive, treat them as much as we can, as often as we can while they're alive, and only when they're dead do we give up on them as a money-producing opportunity. Have I missed something here?
Well, Charlie, you've seen a lot of healthcare reforms and innovations come and go. What is it about blockchain technology in particular? And if you don't know, Charlie's been researching blockchain alongside of me for about 6 to 8 months, and I was surprised. I was very happy to find a receptive audience in Charlie about this. But why don't you tell us what is it about blockchain and distributed ledger technology?
Well, I think it's maybe a chance to cut through the Gordian knot. So why doesn't the system change? We need to talk about that a little bit, because the vested interests want to keep it just like it is. $500 million a year gets spent in Washington among drug companies, hospital companies, insurance companies to keep it just like it is. They don't want reform. They want to talk about reform. But of this $3 trillion we're spending with very poor outcome compared to other Western countries, we could spend half of $3 trillion. So why don't we spend $1.5 trillion for better outcome? The evidence is out there laying on the ground. We know how to do this. Why don't we do that? That's not where the incentive lies. And here's the big problem. How do you think you're going to pry that $1.5 trillion out of the people who are benefiting from it now? This is how people get reelected to Congress. This is how they get reelected to the Senate. They take contributions from drug companies, from hospital companies, from doctor companies, from device companies. Then they go to those companies and say, how do we fix this system that served you so well so we can save money on what we're buying from you? Huh? I asked the barber, do I need a haircut? Oh, yeah, absolutely, you need a haircut. We're asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. The system can't cure itself. That's why prisons and hospitals and schools are in the same place. I think with blockchain and other technologies, and now the awakening of the masses and the fact that people have tools in their hands and will have tools in their hands to cut through a lot of the obfuscation, a lot of the unnecessary stuff, the repeats, et cetera, that there now is finally a chance to break through all of that. And I think this technology applied to healthcare can be a big, big, big part of that.
Great. And can you talk a little bit more about the empowerment of the consumer? We hear a lot about consumerization of healthcare. I feel sometimes like we're chasing a ghost, or we're tilting at windmills to try to get consumers and patients activated and engaged. Can you talk a little bit more about your vision for an activated and engaged community of healthcare seekers?
Yeah, we've known for a long time it's been all upside down. The people who sell the services are those who define what they will be, how much they will cost, and who will provide them to, right? The doctors, and the hospitals, and drug companies, et cetera, decide what the service will be, how we'll put them into bundles, or how we'll put them into disease categories, and how we'll treat people for those, and how we'll find customers for that. We've got the solution, let's find the customers. Nobody's ever started at the other end and says, for a group of people, what's the pathology under here? What are the social determinants of health? As we all know, most of what affects people's health is not the health care they receive or don't receive. It's how they live their lives. Are they eating a diet? Where do they live? Do they have transportation? Do they have water? We don't address those, and that's what's driving most of this spend around these chronic conditions, because people aren't dealing with it. The system doesn't need or want them to deal with it. Let's just treat them more. Let's don't get to root cause. So we have to get back to lifestyles. People have to be informed about how do I have some information that lets me make a better decision. And it can't be as simple as these things we palm out to them and say, read this, listen to that, look at that. We have to engage people. And what's been wrong all along is all of us who provided wanted people to come through our portals to come to my portal, not the other guy's portal. Come to my portal and let me hook up with everybody else. So everybody wants interoperability, but through my portal. The insurance company wants that, hospital wants that, doctor wants that. They're hanging on to those portals. Well, I say give the portal to the people. If individuals had the portal and said, everything to do with my health and health care has to come through my portal. And there were technology that could enable that. And all of a sudden now, you can't provide me care unless all the information about that, the costs, the clinical outcomes, how other people experience it, unless that comes through my portal to me with actionable items, I'm not going to buy from you. And what will get sold in the healthcare system will be very different if informed people at multiple levels have the tools and the information to figure out how to do better for themselves. That's how consumers have taken over all these other businesses. You know, the cab companies didn't want to put themselves out of businesses. The hotels and motels didn't want to put themselves out of business. But Airbnb and Uber and these guys come along and they do it a different way. We're going to get Uberized in healthcare, but it's beyond Uberization. We shouldn't even be riding in cars, right? The challenge in healthcare is don't get me a cheaper way for one of me to get in the car to get from here to here that's more convenient and has surge rates. That's how healthcare works. How about we don't get in the car at all? Let's take the healthcare to the people. And that's what's available now. We invested in a company that does in-home hospitalization. You would be an acute care patient in the hospital. We're doing this today. You don't have to do that. You can go home. You don't fall on the way to the bathroom because it's not lit. You don't get bad food. You don't hear clanging in the halls. You don't get MRSA. You go home instead of into the hospital, and it's a third the cost. Who doesn't like that? Well, the hospital and some other people who make money along the way. So how are these people going to change the industry? No. Has anybody seen, as well as we've had one part of our government trying to lead from behind in foreign policy, what we're trying to do with healthcare reform is say to the people who've got it this screwed up, like me, after decades and decades, you guys tell us how to fix it. No, revolutions don't come led by the royalty. The royalty don't lead revolutions. The royalty are doing just fine now. The shareholders and investors in big health are doing just fine, but the people are being poorly served. And I think there is now a time and a way to let the people wake up, get tools in their hands. I could be a lot more specific about activities we're involved in that enable that. Very exciting time for me now to be outside instead of inside, trying to put the patient, the person, not the patient, the person, because 99.9% of the time they're not the patient, they're the person. How do we put that person and the family back in the center of this important decision making about health care? How do we give them incentives that are meaningful and manageable? What if a family of 5 knew I've got $50,000 stuck away from me here this year for health care? And depending on the choices I make, I can spend that wisely or foolishly. Nothing like that exists in health care today. Nothing like that exists. But if you could say to somebody, you're 45 pounds overweight, you're diabetic, you had this back problem, you're going to go have surgery, how about if we start with, let's lose 45 pounds, change the diet, get in shape, and maybe we don't need the surgery. What if I could reward you for that, take pre-tax health dollars, because you stayed healthy, and go buy yourself a TV or an ATV, right? Go buy one of those things, something you'd like. Don't get a back surgery you don't need when you can fix it a better way, faster, better for you, better clinical outcome. We've got to turn it upside down. We've got to gamify this game. We have to learn how the casinos bring people in spending money they don't have to entertain themselves. I got a friend who just sold a company that had $35 billion of revenue, and he's making $100 million a year in cash flow on slots, getting people to come in, spend money they don't have for entertainment that entertains them, but he gets them back. What if we had that kind of thinking, and we've got health care, and we've already got the bank here, we've got the $50,000 per family. What if we let them play the game, so how much of that can I keep? We're not waiting for the bells to ring when I won the jackpot. We're waiting for the bell to ring when I made the right decision that didn't spend dollars unnecessarily. That can be done. That's not a hard drop. I mean, anybody, you guys know about Pokemon Go? Changes behavior pretty darn radically. I was out in Aspen at the Fortune Future Institute or something 2 or 3 days after Pokemon Go, and I met the guy who did Pokemon Go. A pretty simple concept here. Give some people that's fun to do, that they engage in, and they'll put their lives at risk, right? They go fall into rivers, and they get run over by cars, and people come rob them playing this game, Pokemon Go. Gosh, why couldn't you get people engaged with that same kind of commitment to getting and staying healthy?
Well, talking about revolutions and royalty, Charlie, we've got a lot of royalty in the room. So what advice would you give to existing healthcare companies across the spectrum, from health systems to payers to pharma? What advice would you give to them about blockchain?
Well, my thought is I was very encouraged when I heard the Humana CIO speak this morning, and I really like that talk, and I'm dead on. There's somebody who understands how, as a payer, we're going to have to do something different. We have to involve the individual. So I think these big companies can be brought into that with some innovative leadership within the company, with some pressure from the outside, but I think those are going to be slow, long, lumbering steps. So I encourage everybody who's in the business. I tried it for years to make the change from inside. I just couldn't make it happen fast enough for me, and I'm getting old, so I had to get out and say, can we do it a little faster, a little quicker, a little better? I sponsored, when I was at Vanguard 7 years ago, a third rail conference in this very room with about this many people, and we talked about this same subject 7 years ago. Too much health care, the wrong people, evidence not to support it, not enough spent on this, too much waste and fraud and abuse in the system, too much friction cost. Blockchain take friction cost out. Why should 16% of all the dollars be making up the bill, putting the code on, getting it here, rationalizing the bill? We got to get the payment back. Let's fix that. So the whole revenue chain, supply chain, payables chain, all locked up in processes that don't even need to exist. But why are the people now who are engaged in those processes want them to go away? I found in my companies I tried to change their performance for the better. The hardest thing for me to get somebody in a hospital to stop doing is something that was absolutely unnecessary, but they did better than anybody else. Our stats are better than anybody on this thing, but the thing is completely worthless. It's hard to get them to stop, really hard. So this change is going to be hard from within. I think it can come, but I think it's the time for the combination from inside-outside game to make this happen. I think a lot of organizations are committed to this. There are a lot of advocacy groups that are committed to this. We're not the only people talking about this. So I think it's finding like-minded people, find a way to round up the voice for those underneath and let the groundswell of what's needed overtake the let's keep it just like it is, because everything in the establishment wants to keep it just like it is. No need for reform here. There's nothing behind. There's nobody behind here. Really, there's nothing behind the shade. It's all out here, but it's not.
We've got time for a couple of questions from the audience. I think you all have microphones down there. Is that right? Let me see. There's a hand way over here in the corner. Yes.
Maybe there are no questions.
No,
Yeah, just
they're delivering the microphones, I think.
that's just a great presentation. I'm a physician with some business and public health experience, but I believe these public blockchains, what's very interesting about it is they're already incentivized, deep individual incentivization for empowerment of individuals. And I've been studying this for 2 years now. I think that there is a real possibility of empowering people and patients to take care of themselves I think it's just about alignment of incentives. And somebody earlier was talking about travel miles or discount miles. Well, there's already an incentive in some of the public blockchains with crypto economics already built in to incentivize people. And you might start small. For instance, as an obstetrician, every patient that is pregnant postpartum, in other words, after they've delivered, they need to fill out all this family practice, Family Leave Act stuff, and it's terrible. It's terrible for the doctors, it's terrible for the patients, it's terrible for the insurance companies. Half of them are paperwork, that takes forever to build. Well, you could easily build a form and incentivize patients to use it. Insurance companies will love it, and I guarantee you the doctors and nurses are going to love that form. So there's like a million different ways of solving the problem, but disruptive technology in general requires new markets, and I think you're absolutely correct. Where we're going to see the revolution is going to be in new markets, perhaps with disadvantaged people, and it will solve a lot of problems of public health. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment on that, Corey?
I don't, personally.
No, I mean, point well made. And I think one of the things that's going to come out of this is a company that's going to be announced this afternoon called Hash. And one of the things Hash is going to hope to do is to assemble and convene people who want to be collaborators in this effort. And so I think a really important way to get started on this is get like-minded people working together, thinking together. So if we can get people into this consortium, and if we can do the development studio that kind of takes some of these ideas and build them up into things that could be companies. There are a lot of people dabbling around this, but we need some framework for it. We need an infrastructure for it, and that's going to have to be built virtually. There's no single company that's going to do that. So we want to just be those folks who are at the leading edge, enabling this with technology, assembling people through a consortium or some other format to figure out how to do this, and then let companies get birthed out of that, or those that are already in existence find their legs in a way to be more meaningful and integrated way. Because we never get the information all flowing through the portal of the individual, all the medical stuff is there, so you don't go to any place that they don't know all about what you've done before. You don't have the repeat tests, you don't have the do-overs, you don't have the skipped information, you don't have the lack of integration when you go to the specialist, back to this doctor, that doctor. It's going to take the patient to do that, and the patient's going to need tools to do that and a reason to do it. That's, to me, what this conversation is about. How do we take the technology to finally turn healthcare on its head? Because it's not going to turn itself upside down. The incentives are too strong to keep it like it is. Nobody really wants to change it too dramatically. What have we seen? Let's just put more money in, make it more complicated, lose more and more of the young healthy because they don't come into this underwriting quagmire called ACA, and so the underwriting doesn't work. The insurance companies are supposed to not lose money in this underwriting, right? They're all fleeing the market now because in 2014, instead of getting 100% of their losses made up, which is what the law said, they got 12%, because Rubio cut off the back door to the Congress, through the Congress, to get the government to pay the losses. So they only got 12% between these rails of penalize those who make more, give it to those who make less, and so now you have United, Blue Cross, and everybody else scrambling to get out. Does this mean we're through?
I'm not sure. We are.
I think our time is up.
Thank you all so much.
Further the respondent saith not. I'm going to get out from between the hedges.